This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode number 162 of the Haulin Assets podcast. Today we are talking about the road to better safety. This is the title of our upcoming VHS tape that we'll be releasing, informational safety video. I'm your host, Craig. Over there, he's Chris.
What's up, Craig?
Hey, Chris. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not bad. Now, Chris, those on YouTube watching have already noticed something strange.
Something different.
In the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You want to introduce your friend here?
Yeah, we've got Alex with us today. She's kind of the head safety guru at Motor Carrier HQ. Knows everything on how to deal with the FMCSA, with the DOT, knows the regulations inside and out. So that's, as we've kind of led up to the last episode, that's what we're going to talk about today. And I actually think we've got so much information today, we're going to end up breaking this into I said 2 episodes, but I think this is going to become 3 episoades.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, we were recording 3 episodes today?
Well, to do 2 today. We recorded the one last time.
Right.
1 plus 2 equals 3.
Yeah, that's shockingly good math for you, spreadsheet boy.
I didn't even use a spreadsheet.
Alex, hi.
Hi.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Glad you're here. And for the eagle-eyed listeners out there, Chris mentioned, Alex, you are with Motor Carrier HQ, which is where people can go. motorcarrierhq.com for resources, tools, tips, people like Alex who can help you out making that jump from employee driver to owner operator and beyond. See, now I'm a Disney movie, maybe on VHS. Right? All right, so I should also remind everybody to go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com for full show notes and past episodes. HaulinAssetsAcademy.com, where you can actually take courses that take you through a lot of the stuff that we covered, especially early in the show. I mean, not just that, but some of the stuff that is going to be most valuable to somebody who's just making that transition. HaulinAssetsAcademy.com. And lastly, review us nicely, right? Yeah.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah. Well, just review us. Hey, 1 star, I don't know. They sound like...
If there is a 1 star, blame it on Craig. My ego can't handle it.
All right. So there was a recent story. Something happened with Tyler, was it?
We just had one of our drivers have an inspection, and it didn't turn out as well as we would have liked, but it's kind of one of those things that it does a really good job of highlighting how confusing the FMCSA regulations can be, and not just for drivers and fleet managers, but also even the inspectors themselves. And so let me kind of preface this a little bit. We do a lot of agriculture exempt use. It's an exemption that you can use when you're working with the FMCSA regulations, your hours of service stuff. And we use it a lot because we haul a lot of produce and other agricultural products. And so basically how that works is you essentially don't have to use a logbook when you're within a 150-mile radius of where you're picking up your load. And in this situation where this inspection turned confusing is, this is no fault of the drivers. Like, again, this is confusing for everybody. He used the FMCSA, the ag exemption, at the source where he picked up the product, which was good. But then he also used it at the receiver, which with certain agricultural products you can't do, and with other agricultural products you can do.
Okay.
And so it's just it makes it incredibly confusing. And when you even talk to other inspectors, they'll say, yeah, you can use it at both ends. And then, inspectors that probably know exactly, like the nerdy ones with the glasses, the taped glasses.
That was the meanest thing you have ever done on this entire show. Okay.
Those guys that know them like the back of their hand, that have no life, they're gonna know.
Wow. You're sitting next to Alex right now.
Alex is a cool, smart person.
Oh, okay.
My glasses don't have tape on them.
Yeah, see, that's why I said the tape. And so, those guys, when they push their glasses up, they're going to tell you can only use for this particular product.
Right.
At you can use it at the source where you pick it up, but you can't use it at the destination. And so where the confusion came in is using it incorrectly at the destination. And I just kind of bring that up as, again, a point that the regulations are confusing. And when we've asked other inspectors, they've said, yeah, no, you're okay to do that. And so like even a lot of the inspectors, the officers, DOT officers, they don't understand the regulations perfectly well. And so sometimes we get away with it because the guy doesn't really know the ins and outs of absolutely everything.
You can't
count on it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well,
lesson learned.
I mean, that's all we can do. In fact, I was just talking to my son about that. I don't care if you make mistakes as long as you learn from them.
Yeah.
I care if you make the mistakes again.
Agreed.
All right. So speaking of which, Chris, last episode we talked, or not last episode, but the last one that we did on safety and regulations and all that stuff. We talked about CSA scores and how all of that works out. And today you wanted to, I imagine that got you thinking a little bit more, if you weren't already, about the program that Haulin Assets has in place. And you kind of wanted to talk about that and dig into how you guys are thinking about all this, right?
That to a certain extent. And then also, essentially what happens when you have an issue with the DOT or FMCSA, if you're kind of on their radar, how do we navigate that? And,
right.
And what is an audit? How do they work? And some of that stuff.
Okay. All right. So where do you want to start with all this stuff then? How do you want to get into it?
I think a great place to start, and we can ask Alex some questions about this, is really what's kind of the first indication that a company gets when they know they're on the FMCSA's radar?
Okay.
So let me ask you first, Alex, when should they know? What should be their very first indication?
Their very first indication, I think, should be when you start getting more of those roadside inspections from a higher ISS score. If you notice that your drivers, when you're watching your roadside inspections, you get the same repeat violations, that's going to be when you're starting to get on their radar.
So your drivers are getting pulled over more often, and you start to go, alarm bells are going off, our score might be creeping up. Are companies not typically just laser-eyed focused on that number and know what it is all the time? Or how do you get the number? How do you know what your score is?
Yeah, so the ISS score, you can view that on your SMS results in ANI, which is where carriers can view all of their roadside inspections for up to the previous 24 months. To answer your first question, I think it's highly likely that carriers do not know what their ISS score is. That's one question I receive fairly often from carriers, is inquiring about what their ISS score is or what their percentile score is across all those basics. I think they're answering it on carrier packets, but that is a very common question that we answer for people.
And so one of the things I'm putting in the show notes is a link to the FMCSA portal, where you can go in and you can log in and you can see all this information. You can see what your ISS score, which is Inspection Selection System score. We talked a little bit about this in the last episode about safety. And that's really, you can see all the inspections that have happened, and you need to stay on that and look at that at least once a month. A lot of the data only, especially your CSA scores, that only gets updated once a month. But you can see inspections your drivers have had in the last 24 to 48 hours. You can see what your ISS score is. And this is where a lot of carriers, especially the smaller ones, aren't diligent in the CSA scores and your safety program. You've got to be logging into that on a regular basis. That way, if there is a problem, you're hedging the problem, you're fixing the problem sooner rather than later. Because kind of the next step, if that hasn't dawned on you, you're getting probably a letter or some other kind of notification from the FMCSA, and at that point you're probably already it's harder to reverse the ship. Is that fair to say, Alex?
Yeah, very fair. I mean, once you get a letter from the FMCSA that you are on a watch list with them or you need to be careful, you're already on very thin ice with them.
Really? Okay, so long before you ever get the letter, you may start getting indications that you need to check out what your score is.
Yes.
And okay, so you can go do that. Now, as I recall from our last conversation, Chris, there are different categories that you can get scored in, and then it's an overall. Is it an aggregate score that is going to put you over the edge as far as
it's a
the
percentage
ISS score?
So it's based on how you compare to other fleets, and in each category has a different, they call it the threshold. Some of the thresholds are 65%, some of them are 85%. And so when you get, and Alex, this is kind of one of the things that you mentioned to me, maybe you can tell everybody, is there's kind of a set parameter where you're getting some kind of intervention from the FMCSA. Do you remember what I...
Yeah, so the FMCSA will consider you a high-risk carrier once you have been over 90% in two or more basics for more than 90 days.
Okay, and what are basics?
Those are those categories that you can view on that ANI system: the unsafe driving, crash indicator, hours of service, vehicle maintenance, hazardous materials, compliance, and driver fitness and controlled substances.
Okay, so if your score is showing as 90% or above, which, okay, think golf, people, this is bad. 90% or, the higher the worse, right? So if it's 90% or higher in two of those basic categories, you're not up a creek, but you're going to have a tough year ahead. Is that right?
Yeah. Exactly. And that's why those intervention thresholds are a little bit lower. They're set at that 65%. And so you pass that intervention threshold, and when you log in, you'll see a big yellow triangle with an exclamation point that it's meant to draw your attention there. That's kind of the first sign that you've passed that intervention threshold. And then if you get to that 90 percentile, that's when you're going to start getting in trouble and getting those warning letters on the FMCSA's watch list. They monitor it monthly, and if they don't start to see your scores fall after a couple of months, that's when they're going to start coming out to do actual in-depth dives.
On-site stuff.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Alex, let's paint a picture here. You're working with a trucking company, and you're talking about these scores, and they're saying, oh, it seems like we've seen an uptick in our the roadside inspections, and oh gosh. Okay, so you say, let's go check out your ISS score, and you see that they've got a couple of 80s, maybe an 85. Oh, there's no 90s. You're good. Breathe a sigh of relief, right?
Wrong. Very wrong.
Okay, so how do you approach that when you actually see the scores and it's not technically over that threshold you're talking about? Are there gradients, kind of gradations of how much scrutiny you're under at the moment?
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you're over the intervention threshold, but you're still under 90%, it doesn't matter if you're at 65% or you're at 89%. Those people are all
it's a cutoff.
They're kind of viewed the same way. Once you go over 90, you're in trouble. If you're under the intervention threshold, great. But in that interim period, that's when it's really important to start looking at, company policies and procedures, making sure that you have adequate safety practices in place to protect your company, because while it's your company and your livelihood, it's your drivers out on the road that are going to make or break that for you.
Right. Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Just one point I want to make with that, just to kind of reiterate. Another reason that you don't want to just kind of ignore things until you hit that 90% is because it doesn't take very long or very much to go from under the threshold to over 90%, especially if you're a small carrier. One bad inspection with multiple hours of service violations and the vehicle maintenance violations, especially if they're out of service, your score can go from okay to terrible really, really fast.
Yeah.
And so you need to be I get nervous if we ever start even, approaching that threshold number. So I recommend if you see a trend and you're starting to uptick a little bit, it's time to, kind of reflect and say, hey, what are we doing wrong? What can we do better?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I mentioned, you can't count on X a while ago, and this kind of falls under that category. But I imagine that inspectors, they know, when you get pulled in for a roadside, they they know what your score is. They know kind of the deal with your company already. Oh. And if you have scores that are creeping up, they know that. And I imagine that they're going to be even tougher. And whereas if you keep that score low, if there's some tiny little minor infraction, they might just say, hey, you need to go get that taken care of. We might not be able to help you out next time, that sort of thing. Am I crazy there?
No, I wouldn't say you're crazy.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. No, but does that make sense? Like, so the lower you keep it, the easier it is to keep it low, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. So the score is creeping up, and now the FMCSA has you on their radar. How are they going to notify you? Is this the IRS where you get like a flop sweat panic when the thing comes in the mail and it says IRS in the corner? You know, do you get it in the mail? Is it an email? How does that work?
So a lot of those notifications, even the warning letters, when they come out regarding those individual basics, they're going out via email now. The FMCSA is really trying to move away from paper notifications. So a lot of it is electronic.
Okay. All right. And they'll notify you of when you're over that threshold and that, hey, we're going to be auditing you, or on-site inspection. What sort of things can you expect to hear from them?
In the warning letter, it's just going to detail what you're over the threshold in and areas that you need to focus on and where you really need to get control of what's happening out on the road. If you go beyond that and you don't straighten things out and the FMCSA decides to do additional interventions such as a compliance review, then those notifications also come via email. And it's basically a letter that asks you to go on to ANI and upload very basic paperwork. And from there, they can ask you to do things only for unsafe driving if that's your only area of concern. But if you have 2 or 3, you very well could be looking at uploading full driver qualification files, full hours of service documents, full maintenance files up to previous 12 months. So it really comes down to what you are over that intervention threshold in. And the more basics that you're over, the more paperwork you're going to have to provide.
Again, it's the higher you are, the tougher it is to get low, right?
Exactly.
So, okay, that makes sense. All right, so you're talking about uploading paperwork and whatnot. I remember from my conversation last time with Chris that sometimes these are remote audits. Hey, we just need all your paperwork, all of the forms and inspections and all that stuff. But then there are on-site audits where they'll come and take an actual eye at your company, right? So how common are each of those, and what can people expect? How do they actually do these audits? Yeah,
so we've seen a huge uptick in off-site audits. So those are what you would consider when you're just uploading paperwork. Mm-hmm. The way that you are going to get selected for in-person is if you ignore their requests. If you don't follow through and provide them with the paperwork by the deadlines that they've assigned, typically it's a week to 2 weeks is what they give you to upload each batch of paperwork. If you ignore that, miss your deadline, don't communicate with your reviewer, then you're going to get picked for an on-site, which is when they actually come out to your place of business. And
now they're grumpy.
Exactly. And now they're grumpy, right. And they're going to just bang on your door.
Yeah, that's right. You can't do it from your couch anymore.
Put their shirt and tie on.
So retape their glasses.
Mad.
Nice. Okay, so you're following all the rules, trucking company owner, and you're communicating well. They're asking you for stuff. What sort of documents are going to be requested of you?
Yeah, so it always starts with a driver list, an equipment list, an accident register if applicable. And then there's usually an audit questionnaire, which just breaks down company address, where you park your trucks if that's different, average how many miles your fleet travels in a month, how many drivers you have, what type of equipment you operate. So that's all provided by the reviewer in that initial email. And then you fill it out, go ahead and upload it and submit it. And from there is where you find out really how much trouble you're in. If they're going to ask for paperwork in one section or if they're going to open everything up and make you send in the whole kitchen sink.
Okay. All right. And
so speaking of the kitchen sink, let's talk. So there's the way I kind of look at it. There's 3 different main audits. There's the comprehensive that we've talked a little bit about, where they do everything, a focused, and the DOT FMCSA, they don't refer to them as audits. They're compliance reviews. So you've got the focused, and then you've got comprehensive. And then the only one that they kind of refer to as an audit is a new entrant audit. And that's for those brand new motor carriers that everybody has to go through a new entrant audit within their first 12 months of operations. So those are the 3 types. And, they can either be, like we said, offsite or in person.
Right.
You kind of hope for the in-person or the offsite. So it's easier on everybody, right?
Yeah, the offsites are much easier. Occasionally, once you finish the offsite upload, your reviewer may come out to your place of business just to get eyes and see that you have physical copies of everything, but they're not going to come out and actually perform the audit. So you're looking at them being in your place of business for 1 hour to just see that you do have everything versus sometimes days for them to invade your working space, get into all of your company records, and really dig deep into everything.
Right. Which, this is about business, right? We're talking about safety and regulation and all that, but hey, you're in this business as a business to make money. And if you've got an inspector on site for 3 days disrupting your business, that's going to be tough for, for revenue, for operations, for all that stuff. So definitely to be avoided,
yes.
I would say. Okay. So there are, you gave me a list of some of the basic items that they're going to ask for, but there are places in my notes here where it says that companies often struggle. I mean, what have you guys seen? Because I don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers. Okay, that's why I have you here. So what have you seen as far as what most companies that do struggle with as far as documentation?
Truly, a lot of the ones who struggle heavily don't even have those basic things in place, like a driver registry, a vehicle list, to even show who's currently working for the company and what they have out on the road. And so then they're not only scrambling to pull everything together, they don't even have the most basic information that you should have available regarding who's working for you right now.
Okay.
Again, like I said kind of at the beginning, all of this can be really confusing. It can be overwhelming, daunting. There's differences of opinions in a lot of things. And so one of the products that Motor Carrier HQ has is what's called an audit assistance package. And it kind of is a system that helps you know what items need to be included. So, and it's one thing that as soon as you start your company, you should have and you should start building and maintaining, so that if you do get audited, you're kind of prepared and you can just upload those documents and it becomes really easy. You look like a superstar. But even if you've been in business for several years and you haven't started doing this, it's never too late to start. If an auditor typically sees that you are making an effort and you may have been wrong at one point, but have made the corrections on your own, you're going to be in a lot better. So, that audit assistance system is something that you can just go to motorcarrierhq.com and go in the store and you can purchase. It's super helpful. And, especially back in the day when there were a lot more on-site audits, auditors would love it because they'd come in, they'd see, somebody was using our system and they could be there for an hour or two instead of a day or two. And so, you need to have something and you need to start working on it.
Okay. All right. So you've got the documentation submitted and they are reviewing that, and then they're going to notify you of the results. How do they do that? Email again? And how quickly?
Yeah, email again is how those come out. And circling back to the first audit, that new entrant one that Chris mentioned, they make it a little difficult to find your actual results within the PDF document that they send you. It's really tiny print and it says your proposed safety audit result is, and it says pass or fail.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if it's a pass, great. You don't have anything else to worry about. But if you do fail, then you're in a little bit more hot water. But those notifications do tend to come via email. They also send them out via mail, but you're going to get that email way before you get a letter in the mail.
Right. So you'll get paper for your records.
Yep.
But you're going to be looking for the electronic version first.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And wait, did you say how quickly they come? Is it a matter of days? Is it weeks?
So that's one that's hard to estimate because it really depends on how much is on your auditor's current work list. I've had some audit results come back same day, and we've had some auditors respond that they're 6 months behind.
Ooh.
So they'll look at the paperwork when they can, and they'll let you know your results, which is kind of inconvenient to wait for 6 months to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of getting to what we were saying earlier, that if you start getting a high ISS score, it's hard to bring it down, or it can be, because, hey, if you're waiting for months for that the results of that inspection, then, or the audit, I should say, then you're going to be pulled in for inspections that whole 6 month period, right, where that score is staying right where it is, if I'm understanding the system correctly. And so until the auditor submits their results, you're up a creek.
Yeah,
right.
And
you can't get those numbers down.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, say it takes them 6 months to review your paperwork, but your vehicle inspection expired in that 6 months. They'll come back to you and ask you for a new one to show that you've actually taken it in, had that inspection done, and it wasn't just a one-time thing, so you could pass your initial audit.
Right.
So until you have your results, it's really important to keep an eye on your inbox, keep an eye on mail that's coming in, to make sure that you receive those past results before you start just ignoring your inbox.
Which you should never do. Okay. Don't listen to Alex. All right, Chris, let's talk now about the ratings that you're going to get, right? This is something that I know you wanted to talk about again, but I remember you talking about it last time, the conditional ratings, the satisfactory. And
we're going to go into a little bit more detail about them. And first, I want to ask Alex this. Can you get a safety rating on a focused compliance review?
So a focused compliance review does not result in a safety rating. A lot of times the Part B, which we'll talk more about, will say not rated. If they see things that they really do not like in a in a focused compliance review, they can always change it to comprehensive and start to look at everything. Just because they say it's focused doesn't mean it always will be. So
to get a actual safety rating, you have to have a full-blown comprehensive compliance review.
Yes.
The new entrant audit is a pass or fail, and then a compliance review, it has to be comprehensive to get actual either the satisfactory, conditional, or unsatisfactory rating.
Okay. All right. So is there anything else that we need to know about that?
I kind of want to talk a little bit about what each one of those means from more of an operational standpoint. And so if you get a satisfactory safety rating, everything's good. Like that's the gold standard. That's what you want. But if you get either a conditional or an unsatisfactory rating, that's going to affect your business operations. So let's talk about conditional first. In my experience, and kind of what I've seen, are there two really big problems that happen if you have a conditional safety rating. The first one is some brokers and shippers won't do business with you. And so that limits your ability to get loads. And typically it limits your ability to get good paying loads. And even if you can get good paying loads, sometimes brokers and shippers will use that as a leverage tool or a negotiating tool to kind of drive down what they'll pay for you.
Sure.
And so conditional rating can obviously pinch you quite a bit. The other area where it really affects you is insurance costs. Some insurance carriers won't even give a trucking company with a conditional safety rating insurance. They'll just say, we're not going to cover you. The ones that will cover you, they're going to charge you more because they deem you as a higher risk. And so they're going to price your insurance higher due to that.
Right.
So you just, obviously it's something you really want to avoid.
Okay. Well, I think we've talked about why you want to avoid all of this. There's definitely more to go through, but I think we'll pause there and wait for the next episode to kind of dig into. You know what, Chris? Why don't you give us a little preview of what we're going to be talking about next time?
So in the next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about, okay, now what happens if I get a, conditional or unsatisfactory rating? If you've got an unsatisfactory rating, you've got to shut down your operations, right? And so
Wow.
that's
Really?
like you can't even operate. They've deemed you that high of a risk. So we're going to talk about what do you do to go from a safety, unsatisfactory to increase that safety rating. We're going to talk a little bit about if you fail a new entrant audit, what do you do there, and kind of go from there.
Okay, so how to dig yourself out of a hole will come up next time. Stick around, everybody. And thanks for listening to this episode. Again, to get all of this information for the full show notes, HaulinAssetsLLC.com. MotorCarrierHQ.com is where you can get, all the stuff that I talked about at the beginning. I don't have to do this whole thing again. And then HaulinAssetsAcademy.com for the courses that you can take to start your trucking company. Now, Chris, Alex, I will see both of you next time.
I'll see you then.
Looking forward to it.